The NBA trade deadline is heating up, but how did last year's moves work out? It's crazy looking back at the effects of these moves, some of which seemed irrelevant at the time. A trade that almost everyone glossed over, but is actually really interesting looking back, is the trade that sent Bol, PJ Dozier, and a second rounder to the Magic, with the Celtics getting back a second in return. At the time of the deal, Bol had only been on the Celtics for a few weeks and hadn't seen the court. Even going to the Magic, I don't think many expected that to change all that much, and that's what happened, failing to play a single minute for the entirety of last season. I think most coming into this year forgot he was even on the team, but he's actually played a pretty big role for the Magic, and he's been really impressive, averaging 11 points, 7 rebounds, and 1.5 blocks. It's hard to say what his role will be going forward with the return of Jonathan Isaac, but nonetheless, a very interesting young asset to keep your eye on, especially considering they got him at last year's deadline for practically free. A small trade I was intrigued by was the deal that sent Montrezl Harrell to the Hornets for Vernon Carey, Ish Smith, and a second rounder. Obviously a super low price for the 6th man of the year, but on an expiring deal it made sense. I loved the decision for the Hornets, who were on the hunt for a center, and while it was a solid end of the year for Harrell, it wasn't nearly impressive enough for the Hornets to aggressively try to keep him around. During the offseason, he decided to go to the 76ers, where he's been an okay backup to Embiid. I think one of the first trades that really caught everyone's attention was the Mavericks sending Kristaps Porzingis in a second rounder for Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans. This trade's interesting to look back at, considering it's already had a huge effect on this current trade deadline, with the Mavericks just recently trading for Kyrie Irving, sending a package featuring Spencer Dinwiddie. Now, as far as this trade between Washington and Dallas goes, I think it worked out pretty well for both teams. Kristaps has been playing great in Washington, and they managed to get out of a terrible contract in Bertans. For the Mavericks, Dinwiddie's fit in well the last year, and they obviously just used him as a vital piece to bring in Kyrie Irving. Today's video is sponsored by PrizePicks, a sports pick'em platform where just by choosing more or less on player stats, you can now get up to 25 times your entry. Now, if you guys tailed our last entry, with the help of the Joe Burrow free square, we hit a 10x, and with us having another free square, I'm hoping to make it back to back. I'm going Nicholas Claxton points. He hasn't gotten there in a while, but with Kyrie Irving now on his way to Dallas, I think he shouldn't have much of a problem getting there. I'm then going Jalen Green points, who also hasn't gotten more in a while, but injuries have played a big role in that, so I think this is a good get-right opportunity. I'm then going Kawhi Leonard points, who's been on a roll lately, and I just don't see that stopping. Lastly, we're going with the free square that we're getting for the Super Bowl, where Patrick Mahomes only needs a single passing yard. I wanted to get this video to you guys early in the week so that you have more than enough time to take advantage of that free square. Also, for people that are new to PrizePicks, if you click the link in the description and you use code JIMMER, they're going to give you a deposit match up to $100. Pretty crazy. Thank you, PrizePicks, for sponsoring today's video. A trade that I really thought was questionable at the time was the Celtics deciding to give up Josh Richardson, Romeo Langford, their 2020 first, and a 2028 pick swap for Derek White. Now, it was definitely a lot to give up, but considering that 2022 first became Blake Wesley, who's only played 90 minutes so far this season, I think there's no doubt it's been a huge win for the Celtics. We saw the incredible run they went on to close the year, and Derek White played a decent role in that. His defense and random blow-up games brought a lot of much-needed depth to that backcourt. I think this trade has really aged as a win-win. For the Spurs, while Wesley hasn't necessarily blown anyone away, he's still super promising. They also still have that future pick swap, and there was just no reason for them to be holding on to White given their current situation. A trade I was surprised to see was the deal between the Clippers and Blazers that saw the Blazers trade both Norman Powell and Robert Covington to the Los Angeles Clippers for Eric Bledsoe, Justice Winslow, Keon Johnson, and a second rounder. For the Clippers, I loved it. They were getting another wing scorer in Powell and a versatile defender in Covington. Since the trade, it's been okay, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily moved the needle for them. Powell's been solid, but Covington's age has really started to catch up to him, currently dealing with his smallest role since being a rookie, where it hasn't been all that great. For the Blazers at the time, the haul just looked atrocious, and well, I'm not sure that's really changed. Winslow's defense has made him a solid rotation piece, but I really think they could have gotten more there. The last trade I want to mention before we get to the blockbuster deals was the trade that sent Caris LeVert in a second to the Cavaliers for Ricky Rubio in 2 seconds. This trade is pretty funny, as Ricky Rubio never ended up playing a single game in Indiana due to injury, then during the offseason signed back with Cleveland, so it's hard to argue this wasn't a great trade for them. Now, LeVert's time in Cleveland hasn't been too notable. He's averaged just 12 points on okay efficiency, and actually leading up to the deadline, Vegas currently has it at about a 50-50 shot he gets traded once again. I would say the third biggest trade of last year's deadline was the Pelicans trading for CJ McCollum, Larry Nance, and Tony Snell, with the Blazers getting back Josh Hart, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Thomas Satoransky, and a second rounder. Now, at the time of the trade, it seemed like a pretty underwhelming haul for the Blazers, and I don't think that's changed. Hart is solid, but as of right now, he's set to hit the open market this offseason. For the Pelicans, I think this trade has probably worked out better than anyone expected. The second they got McCollum, it transformed their season and they were able to make it out of the play-in. They then signed him to an extension, and so far this year, he's averaged 21 points and 6 assists on super solid efficiency. He's truly the perfect fit. He's brought them a much needed shot creator, especially with guys like Zion and Ingram struggling to stay on the court. He's also been surprisingly huge as a playmaker. This trade turned them into a legit contender barring health. At the beginning of the season, we briefly saw what they're capable of when they're fully healthy. They had the best record in the league at one point, and I'm still a believer that if they can keep the big three on the court, they are a legit threat in the West. Considering what they gave up in this trade, I think it has to be one of the better trades we've seen in a very long time. The next huge trade we saw has definitely had some interesting developments recently, and that was the Kings sending their young star guard Tyrese Haliburton in the middle of just his second season in the league to the Indiana Pacers for Domantas Sabonis in his prime with 2 years left on his contract. For the Kings, this was clearly a move focused on competing right now, and at the time, I thought it was atrocious for them and incredible for the Pacers. Haliburton was averaging 14 points and 7 assists, shooting 41% from 3 while being a super solid perimeter defender. I just didn't understand how he was anything but untouchable. Almost immediately, this trade looked extremely questionable. Haliburton closed out the year averaging 18 points and 10 assists on practically 50, 40, 90, and the Kings saw little to no improvement, eventually landing a top 4 pick in the draft. Now this year, it's became a little bit more interesting. Haliburton's now an all-star. While it's controversial, nonetheless an all-star. The 22-year-old's averaging 20 points, a league leading over 10 assists, shooting 48% from the field and 39% from 3. I don't think there's many doubting his chance to become one of the best point guards in this league. Now for Sabonis, it's been a really solid season as expected. He's averaging 19 points, 12 rebounds and 7 assists on incredible efficiency. He's a huge reason the Kings currently sit as the 3rd seed in the West. Now, despite the regular season success, I don't think many are expecting a deep playoff run, but they're moving in the right direction, and there's no denying this trade has transformed them overnight. I ripped into the trade at the time. I ripped into it all offseason, but as things stand right now, it's hard not to consider it a win-win. Now, I still believe trading Haliburton could be looked back at as a mistake. I think we can't underrate the Kings' other pickups such as Herter, Monk, and Keegan Murray, but this season has finally given Kings fans something to get excited about, so I don't think either team is regretting this trade whatsoever. I'm sure it's been a roller coaster of emotions for Kings fans this past year, but I want to know what you guys think. A year later, do you think any team has emerged as a clear winner from this trade? Lastly, we have easily the biggest trade of last year's deadline, and that was the move that saw the 76ers land James Harden and Paul Millsap for Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and a 2022 first-round pick, which deferred to 2023, and a 2027 first. Now, while I thought the last trade was pretty one-sided, this trade I liked. With Harden wanting out, I love getting Simmons. We didn't know what to expect offensively, but at least we knew what we would get out of him defensively. They also got a knockdown shooter and 2 first-rounders, a great haul. For the 76ers, I also liked it. Ben Simmons was obviously not going to play another game for the 76ers, and they made a move for one of the best guards in the league, which would hopefully allow them to finally take that next jump in the Eastern Conference. Now for the Nets since the trade, I think it's been what we expected. They weren't really in a position to unleash him, but he's been a solid playmaker and defender. With what we've seen from this team when fully healthy, I think it's been more than a fine move. I say all this, but as of the last couple of days, the situation has completely changed for both the Nets and Ben Simmons. Kyrie Irving requested a trade and he's headed to Dallas. Right now, Vegas is putting the odds at over -200 that Kevin Durant is also traded before Thursday. They're likely looking at a complete roster shakeup, so I'm excited to see if this opens up a ton of opportunity for Ben Simmons. For the 76ers, I think they got exactly what they hoped for. There's no denying, Harden was not looking like the player we'd come to know in Brooklyn, and it seems like he's gotten a little bit of a resurgence here in Philly. This year he's averaging 21 points and 11 assists, shooting 39% from 3. The 76ers currently sit as a serious threat in the East as the 3rd seed and are in the middle of their best stretch of the season. I'm not sure they could have built a better roster given the circumstances. The playmaking of Harden and the dominance of Embiid is a perfect pairing. With the breakout of Maxey, they also now have one of the best backcourts in the league. With the playoffs around the corner, this is one of my favorite teams to pay attention to. Now for this trade, I think the Nets side is slightly debatable, but since we don't know the other Harden trade packages that were on the table, I think this trade has pretty much worked out exactly as we expected. But I want to know your guys' thoughts in the comments below. If you liked the video, smash the like and sub button, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.